Thanks for listening to Leadership Level Up. I'm Brian Prairie.
And I'm Dr. Jeff Williamson.
I am just starting my leadership journey.
And I've been guiding leaders for 30 years.
Our podcast aims to shine a spotlight on outstanding leaders and provide a platform for them to describe their leadership journey and share the guiding principles that have helped them become great leaders.
Welcome to Leadership Level Up Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Williamson, and my co-host, Brian Prairie, alongside our guest and friend, Michael Maloney, who is the CEO and Executive Director of Garden of Prayer Youth Center.
Yes.
That is located in the Kankakee County area, and we'll learn more about that. But you've got, I think, 6+ locations and
Yes.
75 employees serving families and young people. And so I'm so excited to just hear more about that. Thanks for coming in and spending some time
here,
with us.
Michael.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I look forward to our discussion this morning.
That's one of the most fun things about doing the podcast is every single time after it's over, we look at each other and go, that was so fun. That was so good. There were so many meaningful nuggets there, you know. So no pressure, but it'll happen. It'll happen. Yeah. So we were talking a little bit ago about the history of your organization and where that got started. And it's a multi-generational thing. So I'd love to have you tell our listeners a little bit more about how that all began.
Okay. Do you want me to start from the Great Migration?
Maybe with Grandma, who had something on her heart about a place that could become what it is today.
Sure. Yeah, my grandparents, they after migrating from the South, from Mississippi, they resided on the west side of Chicago. And although they enjoyed the city life coming from the rural country areas of Mississippi, my grandmother always enjoyed having land. So the Lord impressed it upon our heart to go out and find some land because my grandmother also liked to have a big family. And she wanted her kids to be able to roam around and feel nature. So she prayed. And she just drove around Illinois, leaving the west side of Chicago. By the way, my grandmother did not have a driver's license.
So she was going rogue.
Right.
That's okay.
So she drove around the Pembroke area, the rural areas of Kankakee, like the Bradley and the Manteno area, the rural areas of Kankakee County before like townhouses and before the urban spread.
It's been a few years.
Yeah. Came down this far. And she drove down 114 and she saw this, I believe it was a vacant farmhouse in this land. And I don't think she initially knew how much land it was at first. And the Lord said, that's it. And she was like, okay. So she went back and told my grandfather, listen, I've been driving around without driver's license. I've been driving around and the Lord led me to this land in moments.
We found our place.
And I believe this is what God wants us to do, is to move out there, expand our family, because although she had 5 children of her own, she also loved she wanted to become a foster parent. And she wanted kids not to have to reside in the city, you know, that urban atmosphere, and wanted kids from the inner city to come out and experience something different. So she found the land, told my grandfather, okay, how are we going to pay for this land? How much is the
What do
land?
you have in mind, Mom? You know,
She had no money. They had no money at the time. And so she prayed, Lord, I need $5,000 to put down on this piece of property. And this was 1968, 69, roughly. And, she went to the bank the first time. No, you got to have some collateral. You got to have a down payment. You got to have something. And she, asked a few churches. And the churches are like, no, we got our own bills to pay, So she went back to this particular banker and said, listen, I have no money, but I know the Lord wants me to have this land. And he said, you know what, Miss Jordan? I believe in the God in you so much that I'm going to waive the down payment. And lo and behold, what she thought was just a farmhouse on a few acres was 54 acres with a farmhouse, a barn. Back then we had chicken coops. And yeah. So they moved from, but by that time they left the west side of Chicago and moved to Markham, Illinois. And then from Markham, my grandparents came down to Moments, Illinois.
Yeah.
Where we're there now.
And is that the location where the ministry center is now, or was it a different home and property? Is this the same one coming out of Momentum?
Yes, it's the same one.
So
6 miles, 7 miles east on Route 114, 2 miles from the Indiana state line.
Yeah. I've driven by that 100 times. And so that is great, man. So you don't have to go very far to tell us about some important leaders and role models in your life then, because I just heard a great leadership story of your mother feeling like God had given her a purpose and a direction, and she went and found the place. Yes. And that was what you said, in the mid 60s?
It was 69, early 70s. I was born in 19.
Yeah, me too. 1911.
Yeah, but I was born in 1970, and it was I want to say it was in 78. Yes, 1978 is when my grandmother had the dream of someone praying in a garden. And from that's where we got the name Garden of Prayer. And at that time, my grandmother, she became a foster parent, and so I got plenty of aunts and uncles out there.
You have quite an extended family, don't you?
Yes. She opened up a home, and she wanted it to be a safe haven, which is also the name of another.
That's another part of the
yeah. So everything stems from my grandmother, and I've been called, affectionately Timothy from the Bible, where his grandmother, his grandmother was a praying woman and taught him about the Bible. And so my grandmother and my mother are women of faith, and they planted that seed down in me.
And then you were sent.
Yes.
Just like Timothy was sent.
Yes.
Oh, I like that. That's cool. So you mentioned something that the banker had faith and trust when they agreed to make a loan without the down payment of what we know today as your ministry. What, besides trust and faith in her, what are some characteristics you would say, her and other leaders have really good characteristics of this or that? What would be some of those examples?
Creativity. My grandmother was very creative, as well as my mother, on how they viewed things, and it's instilled in me not to just do the status quo, not to just do what everyone else is doing for the sake of doing it because everyone else is doing it that way, but try to find another way to do it where you have the same impact, you reach the same goal or objective, but you're just going about it a different way. A more efficient way, a more effective way. However, it's not necessarily saying that, you always trying to find a shortcut, but just a different way to envision reaching that particular goal.
Sometimes we have to work around it. If there's an obstacle, it's like, well, okay, we'll detour and we'll find a way around it.
Right. Well, your main thing is you want to serve. And that's
exactly.
So if you can do that more efficiently, you can serve more. So.
Yes. And that's true. Sometimes there are obstacles that you have to go around. It may take you a little longer. And then there's some obstacles my grandmother told me just to plow right through them.
Just keep on digging, brother. Yeah.
Just plow right through them. And sometimes you have to plow through and sort of worry about the consequences later. And hopefully there won't be any consequences. However, because you're trying to reach your goal, and your goal is, like you said, Brian, is to impact more people and have a greater effectiveness, in terms of impact, sometimes you just got to plow right through because you're working towards the greater good.
Yeah. Stay the course as a phrase that comes to mind.
Yes,
right.
yes,
Right.
yes.
So you have that strong history of leadership in your own family
Yes.
that has developed this ministry over the years that you now lead. Besides your good family and parents and those kind of folks, who would be some others that you would say, there was somebody that was a really good leader or really impacted me along the years, maybe even now? Who would maybe some of those types of people be?
My current pastor, Bishop William Hudson III, he was a very young pastor. He started pastoring I want to say 9 or 11.
Wow.
And the way he carried himself, a man of integrity, and he led through relationship. Sometimes people, they want to lead from a place of position without the relationship. And because he was young, the position didn't matter. So he had to rely on the relationship. So learning to lead by developing a relationship through relationship building is something that I really do appreciate. And he's someone that I admire in that regard. So now he's they call him a chief prelate, where there's a bunch of other bishops under him.
He's investing in other ministry leaders.
Yes, right? Yes. And he consistently expands, but he shows love, compassion, concern for all of those other churches and ministries that he oversees. And so because they feel that love, they go out and tell their pastor friends, hey,
here's how we do it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's so important. I mean, anybody that's hung around me very long heard me say relationships are everything.
Yes.
And so he started there and led with relationship, which builds the trust, which builds, like you said, integrity. Those are some great characteristics. Yes. And I love what you're talking about, how he is continuing to mentor other ministry leaders and invest in them, because really, at some point, that's all of a legacy we have, is who we've invested in that carry on the work of the ministry, that carry on the work of whatever it is that organization's doing. I love that.
And that's true. And that's what my grandmother, and I'm sorry, I'm going back to my grandmother and my mother, but that's what my grandmother did with me. She bought my first keyboard, and I learned how to play the piano by ear. And from that has opened a lot of doors for me through music as well. And then my mother, she invested in my education, and then invested in me in terms of her trust in me to carry on the vision of Garden of Prayer Youth Center. So she incorporated at Garden of Prayer, started as a mission. And we still have that mission minded aspect of our organization. So right now we're supporting, I want to say 3 or 4 schools in Africa. So we have that, we're very mission minded. And then my mother incorporated Garden of Prayer as Garden of Prayer Youth Center in 1995. So that we were able to get our nonprofit status, charitable organization, faith-based organization. That way we can start receiving, funding and different grants and things of that nature. And she became a foster parent. And the funny thing about my mother is that she's actually a registered nurse, and she worked at Shapiro she was one of their first Black female unit directors, and her leadership style, which she's very meticulous and very detailed, and from her meticulosity.
Right, somebody write that down.
She rose through the ranks through the Department of Human Services and became a unit director, and she learned how to manage different people, especially when you have people that feel as though, hey, I'm working here for a pension. It's just not because I love what I do. It's a paycheck, and how to manage those different, attitudes. And then those that really love working with those that had developmental challenges. Again, her ability to be detailed and meticulous is another thing that passed on to me. So I'm very concerned with the details. Now, I'm not a control freak.
Okay,
Because I
wasn't
trust.
bring that up.
But I pay close attention to the details.
Man, she sowed some good seeds in you.
She sure
Yes,
did.
yes.
Oh gosh, I love
So it sounds like, so it was grandma and then it was mom. I mean, it sounds like at a very young age, you kind of like, did you know your path? Like, did you like, this is what I'm going to do?
I really didn't.
Okay.
It's funny that you mentioned that because after I graduated high school, I said, okay, well, my grandmother was a nurse. She was a certified nurse's aide. My mother was a registered nurse. I have an aunt that's a registered nurse. I have an uncle that's a registered nurse. I have another uncle that's an LPN. So I'm saying, all right, I guess my calling is the medical field. So I tried nursing. I enrolled at the nursing program at KCC, and it just didn't feel right. So I went away to SIU in Carbondale, go Salukis, and I said, okay, I'm gonna go into communications. Because I wanted to be a meteorologist.
Really?
I wanted to be the one on the news saying, hey, there's a storm front coming up.
I think you can still do that. Let's not give up on that. Yeah.
But as I started in that program, I realized that I was afraid to talk.
Now, let me just pause there a minute. I'm trying to soak that in. You've overcome that, I think.
Yeah, at that time, lights, cameras, action, I would freeze. And that stems back to a Christmas speech that I gave when I was 9 that I really didn't get all the way through because I froze. So, I'm overcoming that fear now. I'm currently enrolled in Toastmasters here, so I could help improve my ability to manage the butterflies that I have in my stomach, like even right now. So, but we
get that.
Communications, and that just didn't feel right. And then, and so I took a couple of social work classes. And I was like, okay, yeah, this feels right.
These are my people.
Yeah. These are my people. This is where I want to go.
Isn't it beautiful when you kind of get that feeling? It's like, I think I've landed where I'm supposed to be.
It just snaps into place. Like, it's just so nice.
Yeah. Although I wasted about a semester or two waiting for that snap. But it was worth it. It was worth it. So
I like to tell people I graduated summa cum later. So it's okay.
Yeah. So, it snapped. So when I graduated out of high school, I started working for a private agency and started working with kids in foster care. And then my love just grew and expounded. And then at that same time, my mother had foster kids. So I had a few more brothers to come along in our family, and just to see that love and actually the farmhouse that's out there that my grandmother purchased and my grandparents purchased right now is still used for young men.
Right.
And so, my passion just exploded from there. So when I would come home during school break, or when I would come and visit and I would go to the farm, call it the farm, and just sitting around and talking to them young men and hearing their stories. And, my wheels start to turn. Okay, how can I impact them? How can I, help them reach their goals? So
you're like, I want to be a part of this in a better, bigger way.
Yes.
Awesome. Terrific.
Is there any, I don't know, it's cool that you mentioned Toastmasters, because I'm actually thinking about doing it as well. So I can be able to talk, better for these kind of things and in front of people, because I'm doing those things more. Right. And when I don't want to get, like I am now, I'm getting stuck, and so I want to be able to do that better. So other than Toastmasters, is there any podcasts you follow? Is there any books you could recommend, or even just other people that maybe kind of like, this person, I really like what they're doing, or what kind of gets you charged up whenever you're trying to like learn something new?
Well, every morning when I work out, that's when I work out. I generally listen to like T.D. Jakes.
I love Pastor Jakes.
I listen to Bishop Noel Jones because I love their vocabularies. And I love how they explain the different nuances in the scripture and how they bring revelation to the word and how they apply it to today.
Right.
So I've read T.D. Jakes' Don't Drop the Mic, Magic Johnson's 32 Ways I can't remember. So I Grant Cardone.
Yeah.
So I do I don't like to read,
Okay.
but I like to listen.
Okay.
So I get a lot of audiobook guy. Yeah.
I'm the same way. I like to like go for a walk and throw earbuds in and get you
But Pastor Jakes has that voice. I could listen to him all day long, whatever he wanted to talk about. So I could see where him on an audiobook would be easy, man.
Yeah, yes. Him, Carrie Newhoff, who's a Christian thought leader. So that's what I do. You know, I have to find something that's going to feed that leadership drive in me, and so I listen to other leaders that are out there doing the work, that are out there creating impact, because that's something that I aspire to do.
Sure. And they can speak a good word into you by way of their book or an audio or whatever. Yeah, just to say, here's a couple of things I've learned along the way. And I'll often hear those and go, oh, I need to work on that. Yeah.
And every year I also go to the Global Leadership Conference.
Yeah.
Every year. Do not miss it.
Oh, yeah. Those always have some terrific speakers. I've been a fan of that for many, many years too.
Yes.
Yeah.
always come away with something, even if it's simple, it's just something, oh yeah, I should be working on this, you know?
Yeah,
and then just kind of like, it's great to have those moments of just like, I don't know, I call it stoking the fire. Like sometimes the fire goes down, but then like those moments like, oh yeah, that's that. And then this is why I'm doing this.
Yes.
Like, so
it just brings our attention back to those things that matter, that are core values.
Being leaders, you get pulled in so many different directions.
Yes.
So it's tough.
Right. And that's the thing. You have to make sure you don't get pulled away from the things that really matter, that's really core to your own personal mission. Right. And so, you know, I learned about mission creep like 15 years ago, where hey, don't veer off, you know, because, you know, we've had some people that, hey, you guys need to work with adults, or you guys need to open up an outpatient behavioral health clinic for adults and drug treatment centers for adults. And that's not our wheelhouse. We want to work with the generation that's coming up.
Right.
So.
And I affirm that. Absolutely. Yeah. It is easy because when you're doing good work with one group or one age group of people, there are the calls and the need for others, but it's like, we got to keep our eye on the ball. Our mission from grandma praying back years ago was to help young teens who are trying to figure a lot of things out. And I love that so much about what you do at Garden of Prayer. So thanks so much for coming in and chatting with us. We could keep going, but we're going to wrap this episode up. And, and just thanks so much for your time and your heart.
Thank you for having me.
Keep doing the things for the community that you keep doing. Great stuff.
Yes, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yep.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Leadership Level Up. Please subscribe so you don't miss future conversations with great leaders.
Also, be sure to follow Converge on LinkedIn, Facebook, and at Converge Group LLC on Instagram.